Chris Johnson always knew she wanted to serve her country and meet the right partner to serve beside.
You know, he was the epitome of duty on her country, someone that you can trust.
Chris and Jim were going to have an absolutely wonderful life together.
What if the person you believed in most betrayed you?
You know, my gut kept saying something was off.
What if they'd betrayed everybody?
He could do whatever the hell he wanted.
He knew that he's possibly facing a court-martial.
Taking a stand could cost everything.
She was put in a real terrible situation and had to make some hard choices.
I just feared everything.
I couldn't believe that Colonel Johnson would do this.
Because I'm the one that blew the whistle.
That's when everything started to blow up, actually.
I fled. I didn't know at that point what he was capable of. So the young me, wow. As a kid, I was a tomboy. I was always a competitive athlete. In my teen years, I was in beauty pageants, and I was Miss New York Teenager. The Army always attracted me. And then in college, I decided to join Army or ROTC.
Chris is thriving in college. There's only one drawback.
Mount St. Mary was almost at that time almost all women.
Just 9 miles south on the banks of the Hudson River is another college. This one, almost all men.
West Point United States Military Academy is the place where serious cadets go to become career or professional officers.
On Halloween night in 1985, Chris and her girlfriends make an impromptu visit.
We went trick-or-treating in the barracks at West Point. You know, we weren't supposed to be there, but here we were, and Jim was the cadet company commander, and I had dressed up as a baby, and so I had a baby bottle and a blanket. Jim was sitting at his desk studying, trying to ignore what was going on around him. You could tell he was so uncomfortable having this group of giggling girls, and they're all dressed in goofy costumes. I remember going over and just talking to him. I was like, wow, this is really, this guy, you know, this guy really has his stuff together. I made chocolate chip cookies, and Jim made a point of returning the tin to me. And he said, you know, they were the best chocolate chip cookies I ever had. And they say, you know, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. I guess that might have been true a little bit, so. We met the beginning of my junior year, the beginning of his senior year. And by the end of the year, you know, we just both knew that this is somebody we want to spend the rest of our lives with. You know, he was the epitome of duty on her country. That's something you want to be around. I mean, that's the kind of person you want to trust and build a life with. Someone that you can trust. His father was a general and he was stationed in the Pentagon. Lieutenant General James Houston Johnson. They were known sort of as Fort Bragg airborne royalty.
After graduation, Jim continues officers training, while Chris goes to ROTC Airborne School.
At that time, not a lot of women went through airborne school, and I was the only woman in my chalk. At the final graduation jump, he pinned my wings on, and the wings he gave me were the ones his father pinned onto him when he graduated from airborne school. You know, I just thought that that was really special. The day after that was a weekend, and I remember him saying, I'm going to fix us a nice breakfast. The table was set for breakfast, and there was a bouquet of a dozen roses. And he got down on one knee and put the ring on me and asked me to marry him. So it was very romantic and very sweet. We got married on May 17th, 1987. I remember friends saying, I've never seen someone walk down the aisle so confident. Just felt so right.
When they come out of the church, they have the saber bearers who form an arch.
Two people in the front put the sabers down and cross and say, you know, you can only pass with a kiss. So, of course, the bride and groom have to kiss in front of everybody.
Right from the beginning, Chris understood that, you know, Jim would be in command, but Chris would be the commander's wife. Chris embraced that.
Chris puts her own military career on hold, and she and Jim raise 2 children while moving from base to base.
I got involved in the community, you know, learned the skill of being an Army wife, and supported the career.
Army team couples is what we would call them. When they work well together, there's a halo effect.
We were a really awesome team, and they were building him to take on more advanced senior leadership roles.
Truly a great day to be here at Fort Benning, the home of the infantry.
Yeah, we had a happy marriage and a happy family. We had a great life.
Jim's career is on the rise, at a time when the U.S. military needs more good leaders.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
He deployed to Afghanistan with the 82nd. They were a rapid deployment force. Jim got promoted to lieutenant colonel during that time. He came home the following year in 2003, was home for about 3 months, but he'd been selected to command a battalion. They were 101st Airborne Division in Iraq.
This will be a campaign unlike any other in history. A campaign characterized by shock, by surprise, and by the application of overwhelming force.
The children and I moved to Fort Campbell, Kentucky by ourselves because he had already left to go to Iraq. And in September 2005, he deployed again as a battalion commander. And I had concerns that he would be burnt out.
After being apart for almost 4 years, Jim finally returns home. It should be a happy reunion, but something's not right. He's cold and distant, even with his own children.
Jim changed during that deployment. Walking back from the soccer field for one of our children's games, he would just divert off and come back and show up 30 minutes later. Nothing I did was pleasing him. Nothing I did was good enough. All of a sudden, he's not initiating sex at all. So this is when the suspicion starts coming up. Something's not right. He's withdrawing from me. Intimacy is on a decline. What is up?
But then they receive the best possible news.
Jim was selected to command the 173rd Airborne Brigade in Italy, probably the most sought-after infantry brigade command in the United States Army.
We were very excited about it because we were all moving to Europe as a family.
In the summer of 2008, the family relocates to an idyllic residence in Vicenza.
We're finally all together in Europe, and it just didn't feel right. He started getting angry, and I started feeling like I was walking on eggshells around him. I'll never forget one day, too, during that time, he just looked at me and said, "Is this all there is?" Here, we'd worked so hard as a team to get to this, and it was hurtful.
By the end of the year, the relationship is even more strained.
Jim was always engaged with our family. We would do silly things like watch American Idol and all vote together, and he just didn't want to do those things. December 2008 was one of the most miserable Christmases I've ever had. Yeah. So many things weren't making sense. He was insistent that we were going to do a New Year's Eve party. I was worn out and thought, let's just enjoy the holiday as a family. We know you're going to deploy again next year. He said, oh, by the way, we're going to have this Iraqi family join us for this New Year's Eve weekend. And they were going to stay in the house with us.
Jim explains that he became acquainted with the Al-Attar family during his 2 tours in Iraq.
And that he said, there are interpreters. You understand that, right?
There's multiple interpreters at every level inside of a brigade operation. They are part of that same close-knit network for whom you would do almost anything.
I found out he's going to drive to the Netherlands and pick up this family 6 hours up, 6 hours back. And he doesn't have a vehicle big enough to fit them. So he's going to take a vehicle, a van, out of the motor pool, the brigade motor pool, a government-owned vehicle. And he's going to use it for personal reasons. That is a huge no-no. You don't do that. He'd never be that kind of guy that would do that. He didn't lie, cheat, or steal. My gut kept saying something was off. And I couldn't put my finger on it.
Jim arrives home with his friends and presents Aladdin Alatar, his wife Shrek, and their 24-year-old daughter, Haveen.
I remember the father had a heavy mustache. The mother was kind of your frumpy housewife. And her daughter, she had long, dark hair, wore very dark makeup, and she had a young child.
For the first few moments, it seems like this could be a happy New Year's weekend after all. Until Jim does something subtle. Something only Chris, his wife of 20 years, would find shocking.
He scooped down and picked up the 14-month-old, and the child didn't flinch. Jim wasn't somebody that held other people's children, never scooped up a friend's child. It was woman's intuition. And right then and there, I realized that there's something about this family that's just not right. There was something going on here.
Chris is only about to discover the reason for her husband's distance.
In a very, very tiny community locked inside of Italy, there is a patent place of the highest order. There's no secrets.
Jim had gone against everything that the Army and West Point had taught him.
He's doing way worse. He's self-destructing. And little did I know, it was just the very beginning.
He destroyed his family, destroyed his name. He lost everything.
Colonel Jim Johnson is acting completely out of character at the family's New Year's dinner, especially with his interpreter's 24-year-old daughter, Haveen.
I remember not being able to eat. Everything about this is off. They had their own little private corner down on the end of the table. Haveen had a digital camera in her hands, and Jim was messing with it. And it was the same camera I had been given for Christmas. And he had given her one too, exact thing. I really didn't know how to process it. You're just ingesting it and trying to take the next breath. Keep your composure. Don't fall apart in front of these people. That night, and I asked him if, he was having an affair with her. And he said, no, her family would kill her or disown her. Not, I don't feel that way about her. And then I asked him, well, have you kissed her? And he said, yes, but not passionately. What the hell does that mean?
That weekend, Jim tells Chris he wants to take the Alatars shopping at the Army PX.
One of my children said, oh, yeah, we had to wait for Haveen to make her grand entrance down the stairs because we were all sitting around just waiting for her. And she was upstairs doing I don't know what. Haveen is going to get shoes for the baby. And at one point, Jim's like, oh, I'm going to go over here. You take Haveen up to the register and pay for what she wants. So she's got these shoes. And on the way to the register, she finds a cute little sweater for herself. She picks out shampoo and other things for herself, just loading up on whatever product she's looking for. And I'm like floored. The mother, she would go outside and smoke cigarettes. During that whole weekend, she would go out and smoke a cigarette and leave the butt on the ground. Who does that? I ended up cleaning 12 cigarette butts off the ground when they left.
When Jim makes the overnight trip to take the Alatars back to the Netherlands, Chris is left alone to wonder how much trouble her relationship is in.
But I didn't want to believe that he was having sex with her. I still didn't want to believe it. I went into his office when I opened the top drawer, and I saw a notepad, and he had written 3 columns. Divorce now, divorce in 6 months, divorce a year from now. And he had plotted out which would be most advantageous to him. I just remember when I found that note, feeling like the blood had drained from my face. That weekend I not only cooked, but I remember running a load of laundry for them. I did my husband's mistress's laundry. Jim got home and I said, I found a note in your desk today. And I said, are you divorcing me? And he looked at me shocked. He said, well, I'm sorry you saw that. No. And then he said, well, is that what you want? I said, no, I don't want a divorce. I want us to work things out.
When you have an affair in the military, if it's discovered, it normally doesn't turn out well for you in your career, which is why there's always denial, which is why you double down on denial.
Jim denies the affair, but Chris remains dubious.
I knew that the child, Haveen's daughter, could not have been Jim's. He had a vasectomy in June 2000. I think she was born in like November 2007. It's not his child. I kept looking. And I don't know if I was still trying to look for something to prove myself wrong or just prove myself right. Well, I finally did. He has a black book, and in the back, he had all these secret email accounts. And that opened up, at that point, 3 years of emails that he had been communicating with Haveen. And some of them were so juvenile. Like, reading them were embarrassing. It was like he was a teenager, a horny teenager. Literally. One of the emails she wrote to him was like, I'm your little shaitan. It means devil in Arabic. That, yeah, I'm your little shaitan. We make trouble all your life. Kissy, kissy. As the emails progressed between them, I started realizing certain things he was saying with her that corresponded with events in our life. Like him taking money out of one of our personal accounts. He had taken $10,000 and converted it to euro and gave it to her. My legs started shaking. I couldn't stop it. And I thought, screw this. I'm calling him. Woke him up and screamed in the phone, are you her? He can't deny he's having an affair. And of course he said, you're recording this call. Someone's listening in. He wouldn't answer the question. It then led to me insisting that we go to counseling to see the family life chaplain in Vicenza. Because I was not about to give up. I was not going to throw the towel in. I thought I'm going to fight for my marriage. Unfortunately, there's a fair amount of adultery in the Army. Chaplains are there to help preserve marriages. The chaplain gave us this book. And the book was about adultery. I don't even remember the name of the book. I hated it. It just made me so angry. One page said, the person having the affair, it's not your fault. And he just grasped onto that. Like, look, it's not all my fault. It's your fault too that I'm doing this. You know, it allowed Jim to give himself permission to continue to blame me for his actions, which is insane.
If you're a psychologist, this is standard transference. It's transference of blame to somebody else so that you can feel good about yourself. And you build this case, and you actually begin to believe it.
Of course, now I look back and he lied even to this chaplain during our counseling. Not only did he not stop the affair, he continued it and got even more deeply involved. A credit card receipt from his work credit card came to our mail, and I opened it up and there was charges on there that didn't make sense. He was using his government credit card for her VoIP account so they could communicate. He did not stop at all. So then I'm starting to walk around with this big, deep, dark secret. Because if word got out that he was having an affair, his career's over. You know, the Army doesn't tolerate adultery. And so I had this burden now. I'm like, now what do I do with this? You know, I'd invested everything in him. You know, our family was invested. Our children had sacrificed for him to do what his country called him to do. I believed in it. Our children believed in it.
Chris has a very strong sense of right and wrong, very strong morals.
Jim was about to go down to combat with these guys again. I thought that the disruption of having your commander taken out, I did not want to cause a disruption in the brigade. You know, I knew I had to dig up whatever strength I had to handle this with as much grace as I could and to protect Jim, protect him from himself at this point.
Despite the betrayal, Chris continues to put Jim's needs first. And so does Jim.
Jim called early November, how soon can you be ready for a trip? I was like, well, where am I going? And he said, I've gotten a plane ticket for you and you're going to leave Italy. The only way I can fix our marriage is for you not to be there when I come home. I want you gone. I didn't know at that point what he was capable of.
He knows how to plan. He knows how to execute. He knows how to do war gaming, action, reaction, counter-reaction. Revenge becomes very, very powerful.
Noted, I'm Colonel Jim Johnson, commander of the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team, stationed in...
Chris Johnson's husband is wielding his powers as an Army colonel to force her from their home in Vicenza, Italy.
In a normal press conference format.
He's kicking me out. Jim had also said on the phone call, I'm revoking your command sponsorship, which means I'm not allowed to stay in Europe as a family member. I'm gone. I can't stay.
It is very unique to see the brigade commander's wife returned unless they choose to go home. Very, very odd.
I remember shaking. There was something in the tone of Jim's voice that scared me.
Jim is not only pushing Chris out, he's demanding she leave their children behind.
I didn't know at that point what he was capable of. He's the only Army brigade commander in all of Italy. No one questions you.
There was no way Chris would leave her children in a foreign country and come back to the States without them. No way.
I decided for my safety and my children's safety, we're just going to leave. So I ran over to the school and withdrew the children. And then I got one-way plane tickets to leave Italy. I fled. I felt like I fled Italy. And I remember landing in JFK, meeting my parents, getting in the car. And I just remember looking out the window and thinking, now what? Now what do I do? I don't have a job. I have no money. I have nothing. Now what?
5 days later, Jim tracks Chris down at her parents' home.
Kept trying to call. He was calling my parents, and finally I just decided, okay, I'll answer the phone and tell him, stop harassing my mom and dad. I'm here. Our children are safe. My children were very angry with him because they knew about the affair. They met her. I mean, they spent a weekend with this woman that they knew their father was involved with.
Over the next 2 months, the battle over custody intensifies.
He had tried 2 emergency injunctions out of a court in Florida to get emergency custody, and were both denied. There was no cause for it.
In response, Jim initiates an obscure legal maneuver called the Hague Petition.
My understanding of the Hague Petition, he was claiming Chris had kidnapped the child and taken the child back to the United States against Jim's wishes, orders, permission.
Jim is desperate for custody.
He knows how to plan. He knows how to execute. He knows how to do war gaming, action, reaction, counter-reaction. Revenge becomes very, very powerful.
Chris is further stunned when she gets news from Vicenza.
By the end of December, I got a phone call from my neighbor, and she said, Chris, there's been a young woman with a child seen coming and going from your quarters in Vicenza. He had moved his mistress into our house with her kid.
Relationships with foreign nationals are always scrutinized. You're not allowed to have a foreign relationship without reporting that up through your security clearance. It is a security issue.
He just let her roll right in and sleep on my pillow and eat off my dishes. She was just going to roll in and take the place of Chris Johnson. And it was at that point I realized no one's going to stop him. He's blatant about the fact that he's having an affair.
Jim had gone against everything that the Army and West Point had taught him beyond the point of no return.
That's when I realized, okay, I need to do something. And I thought, that's it. I've got to let the commanding general know. It was a moral decision for me to just sit back and not say anything. How do you look yourself in the mirror? I sat at my parents' computer. I typed like 5 pages and I disclosed the email accounts that Jim had, the email accounts that Haveen had that I knew she used to communicate with him, the dates that I knew he had been with her, the misuse of government resources, the cell phone, the government credit card, like all the things I knew about.
After receiving Chris's letter, the Army immediately starts an administrative investigation, known as a 15-6.
By February, the 15-6 then rolled into a criminal investigation.
Meanwhile, the battle over the Hague petition escalates.
Jim's contention was that I was kicked off post because I was a disruption. He and his father both wrote affidavits saying that I was this disruption on the Army post, and that's why I was kicked off post, and that I was ordered to leave our children behind. But he was just trying to find anything to make my life hell. Jim called once and said, I'm going to send U.S. Marshals to the house and, you're going to get arrested. And that lasted for about 2 months. I mean, it was scary because who deals with a Hague? I'm being, accused of kidnapping our children and across international borders. And, it was 2 months of hell. It was amazing feeling when the judge ruled in my favor. My attorneys cried. I cried. I mean, they were so relieved. Stress will do terrible things to your body. I started getting sick, like a pain, abdominal pain, and found out ultimately that I had a pre-malignant tumor the size of a grapefruit on the tail of my pancreas. I had surgery December of 2011, and it was a much more complicated surgery than they had anticipated, and I ended up in the hospital for a week. I got a phone call from the hospital the day after I came home, and they said, well, we've just tried putting your claim into the military health insurance, and they've denied it. You're not covered. You owe us $100,000.
It was devastating. It's not like she had a lot of money.
As a military spouse, Chris should be fully covered.
I couldn't drive. I was still on meds. I still, stitches and, still kind of a mess. And so my sister drove me to the ID card office on West Point. And I, sat down with a woman and handed her my ID card, and she pulled up the information on the computer and said, oh, well, you're divorced. I said, no, I'm not. She goes, yeah, on September 23rd, you got divorced. So they got to shred my ID card, and I just lose it. I just start crying. I'm not divorced. But they knew immediately something fishy was up.
West Point's ID card office notifies the Army's Criminal Investigation Division.
It had alerted Army CID. Because of all that, that's when the Army decided to do a preliminary look to investigate.
I get a phone call from Paul Danley, and he introduces himself as the lead CID agent investigating my husband. And he says, here's what we found out. Jim filed divorce registration. I'm going to scan a copy to you, and I want you to look at it. Your signature's on it. Can you tell me if you've ever seen it before?
That's when everything started to blow up, actually. And it appeared that the divorce decree, or whatever it was called, looked like it was just a copy of a marriage license from when he and Chris got married in New York, with some things changed. Basically,
he created his own certificate of divorce registration. He forged my signature, made up a signature of a clerk in Monroe, and signed his name.
He filed that with the military. Again, that's a crime.
And he said, oh, and by the way, Jim and Haveen got married. On November 9th, they got married.
I couldn't believe that Colonel Johnson would do this. Fake a divorce decree, and then marry Haveen while he's still married to Chris Johnson.
My husband had committed bigamy. Bigamy. Every time I turned around, I thought, now what?
And then all of a sudden, we're getting calls from Vicenza saying, hey, you need to come here. They found a lot more information than what was in Chris Johnson's letter.
Colonel Jim Johnson, who was once committed to duty, honor, and country, has broken his oath in a startling way.
I mean, he committed bigamy. I remember just saying, I can't make this up. One of my children sent their Dad an email later, and all it said was, "How was the wedding? Was there cake?"
It turns out that Jim has been on the radar of CID investigator Paul Danley for some time.
The whole thing started with a contract fraud investigation over in Afghanistan. The contracting office had alerted Army CID because there was a Colonel Johnson, that was raising a ruckus because his contractor wasn't getting paid. They were fairly low-level contracts. This is for cultural support services. They can understand why Colonel Johnson was berating them for not paying this contract when they had other, bigger issues going on. Water, feeding the troops, etc. And they said it was so bad that, it raised red flags. We thought the investigation was done. And out of the blue, Chris contacted me.
Chris provides the missing piece of the puzzle. The fact that the contractor in question is Jim's mistress's dad, Aladdin Alatar.
Oh, why are you dating the contractor's daughter when you're paying her father? That's a big red flag.
So you got an Iraqi man advising on culture in Afghanistan. Apples, oranges, just didn't make sense.
Aladdin Alatar was actually living in The Hague in the Netherlands. He knew nothing about Afghanistan. So it raised just a lot of questions about why this contract was even signed.
Paul asks Chris to provide anything else she can. Emails, credit card statements, travel records.
They started putting the pieces together. So then when I said, by the way, he was also exchanging bank account information with Aladdin, they realized that there was way more to it. He was having an inappropriate relationship, among other things, fraud, misuse of government resources, the whole 9 yards.
Then we discovered that Colonel Johnson had given a phone to the Alatars, a government phone, I should say. And one of the bills came back, I think it was over $30,000 for a month, just for 1 month of cell phone usage.
But there's more. Investigators going through Jim's computer hard drive uncover questionable financial deals worth millions.
They'd found that Colonel Johnson had tried to have a almost $10 million contract let for windmills. The whole contract was spun up as being a way to get water to troops in remote posts, that they'd be able to produce their own water. So when I talked to the company rep for this windmill company, he explained that they wouldn't work in Afghanistan. Someone was trying to push through a contract, almost $10 million for these windmills that wouldn't work. Why are we doing this?
The money trail leads back to Jim and to Havin's father.
Aladdin Alatar had supposedly found these, or was working for this Dutch company that developed the windmills. If this contract had been signed, Aladdin would have got approximately $500,000 as a finder's fee. So that's a big flag. You get the same contractor, you're dating his daughter, and all of a sudden, he's going to get $500,000.
Chris's information makes it possible for the Army to build a solid case on Jim's financial misdeeds. They also find blatant proof of Jim's adultery.
Jim and Haveen made a sex tape, and he kept it on his government computer. They found it on his hard drive.
The greatest disgrace is where and when the tryst was recorded.
He was in Iraq and not in Afghanistan with his brigade. His brigade just went off to war. He's supposed to be leading his soldiers, and instead he's screwing around with his mistress. He's not a leader.
Army investigators have learned all they need to know about Jim Johnson. They're ready to prosecute. Jim is arraigned on a total of 27 charges, with a maximum possible sentence of 54 years.
The charges range from adultery, bigamy, fraud, misuse of government resources, and conduct unbecoming of an officer.
The Army flies Chris to Germany to attend a trial her email helped trigger, and which could cost Jim and her everything.
When you're married, as long as I was, to Jim, upon a divorce, you are eligible for up to half of the service member's military retirement. But if Jim's criminal behavior led to him being dismissed or incarcerated, those benefits would have been taken from him, and so then half of nothing would be nothing for me.
Jim's not going to be the only one that's going to be punished. Chris and the children are going to be punished as well.
Made my stomach churn.
Jim Johnson has not been shut down. Even in the midst of a court-martial, he's about to show his own family how destructive he can be.
Jim was going out of his way to do anything he could to cause Chris and their children pain.
It was just unbelievable. I was so hurt. I just blown away, numb.
I think it's horrible. I think that's the worst of it all.
On June 12, 2012, disgraced Army Colonel Jim Johnson gets his day in court, and Chris is there to watch over the proceedings every step of the way.
You know, I remember one time him looking at me, just, you know, if he could kill me with his eyes, he would have, because I'm the one that blew the whistle.
The original list of 27 charges has come down to 2 counts of conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman by the time the trial starts.
He pled guilty to 15 charges. He had to plead guilty to adultery because they had a videotape of it.
I testified during the trial, testified for a couple days at least.
The prosecution presents an irrefutable case, thanks in part to the evidence Chris has provided them.
It seemed like the panel was getting close to, not only convicting him, but, giving him a sentence, involving some incarceration or maybe a dishonorable discharge from the military.
Jim's attorneys now put anyone willing to testify in defense of Jim on the stand, including Jim's father.
His father said, "My son is an honest man. My son's an honorable man. He's not a liar. My son's not a criminal." Dude, your son is a criminal. He just pled guilty to 15 charges, and now you're up on the witness stand saying, "My son's not a criminal." Really?
Both sides rest their case. It takes the jury only a few hours to reach their decision. Jim Johnson is convicted on 2 counts of conduct unbecoming of an officer. The Army pronounces his behavior to be of a nature to bring discredit upon the armed forces.
What happened to the guy that, embodied duty on our country? What happened to the man that, doesn't lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do?
Jim's sentencing hearing is one last chance to acknowledge the pain he's caused. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he uses the opportunity to plead with the court not to send him to jail, so he can care for his beloved Haveen.
He was talking about, allowing him to go back and save her and keep her from being deported. He also made a comment. He's like, "Haveen and her daughter are the center of my life." And one of my children behind me heard that and just started sobbing. Our children used to be the center of his life. His family, us, was the center of his life.
He destroyed the relationship with his children. He chose to do that. It's just, it's so sad.
5 years confinement or pay a $300,000 fine. That was his sentence. His father wrote a check for $300,000 and paid the fine. He could have gotten up to 54 years in prison. Instead, he walked out of the courtroom as a colonel with eagles still on his shoulders. Justice wasn't served.
Jim should have gone to jail for what he did, but if he did go to jail, Chris and the children would have been catastrophic for them.
Chris does finally divorce Jim Johnson, for real this time.
From what I understand, he's still with Haveen and her daughter. We have no communication. Our children are essentially estranged from him.
Chris and her kids get half of Jim's pension and benefits. She knows not everyone is as lucky.
There's no whistleblower protection for spouses. So you tolerate illegal and immoral behavior, or you turn them in and you risk losing everything. And that's what led me into working on some legislation.
Chris amazes me. She fought for herself and she fought for her children, and now she's fighting for other families.
What we ultimately created was called the Family Served II Military Justice Reform Act. And what that would allow is if a service member commits misconduct, it allows the service to properly punish the lawbreaker without financial repercussions on the family. The benefits that the family has also earned are protected. So that'll be my swan song from the Army. That'll be the last kind of move I do to help take care of families. I'm at peace where I'm at now, and I hope my story gives other spouses hope. You know, you can rebuild. You can have a happy, successful life after going through something so painful. You know, it's just nice to know that someone else who's dealt with it and has gotten through the tunnel towards the light and life is good again.
Tying the knot, Valerie Justice was looking forward to a wonderful life with her teenage daughter and new husband.
Lawrence seemed to be a great father, and we were excited to have the American dream. It was the start of a new chapter for Valerie.
But Valerie never dreamed the man she loved would tear her family apart in the most horrific way.
I never knew a person could be that evil.
He was willing to do anything to keep the truth from coming out.
I was screaming and crying. I just could not believe that this was happening.
When it comes to love and marriage, things aren't always as they seem.
It was a self-imposed rule. Valerie Justice would not date anyone until her 15-year-old daughter, Erin, graduated high school in their Naperville, Illinois town.
Erin and I were extremely close. I had been divorced for 6 years, and she was the joy of my life. I wanted to get married again, but I wanted to concentrate on getting her through high school first. After that, I could get on with my own personal life.
But in 2003, when Erin spent her summer vacation with her father, Valerie soon felt a void in her heart.
I missed Erin tremendously, so I would visit my mother often because we lived not too far away from each other, and she was retired, and she was babysitting all the time.
And one afternoon, while visiting her mother, Valerie was happy to bump into a familiar face, 37-year-old Lawrence Lovejoy.
My mother had started babysitting for his little girl. And so many times when I would go by my mom's house, he was there. Lawrence was going through a divorce, and he was actually spending quite a bit of time there at my mom's. He was a little rough around the edges, just a t-shirt and jeans kind of person. But he was funny, and he was very charming.
Well, Lawrence was easygoing, and he was easy to talk to. He worked as a painter, and he was trying to get back on his feet.
Lawrence had been mentioned to my mother that he was looking for a place to stay. So I made the suggestion that since Erin was gone for the summer, he could share my apartment. He'd have a place to stay, I'd have some help with the rent. And I thought that would be a good arrangement.
Lawrence thought so too, and was more than happy to accept.
I would look forward to going home knowing that someone was there. He was rather entertaining, he made me laugh, and we started spending time together.
My sister Valerie was very serious, and Lawrence was the funny guy. Valerie needed that break in her seriousness by his sense of humor.
By the end of the summer, Valerie decided to break her own rule.
One of the goals that he had expressed to me was to own a home, and I've always wanted to own my own home. He wanted to really progress through life. I found myself attracted to him, and then we ended up in a relationship.
But when Erin returned home in August, she made it known she wasn't keen on having a man around the house.
It was hard for her to imagine anyone else being in the house besides her and I. She didn't want to lose her privacy. But I did not want to end the relationship.
But Valerie did want to do things right.
So at that point in my life, it was my desire to be more Christian. I did not want to continue to live with Lawrence without being married to him.
So Lawrence came up with the perfect solution.
Lawrence looked me straight in the face and told me, "I'm ready." And would I marry him? Yes. So I did say yes, that I would marry him.
After 4 months together, Valerie and Lawrence tied the knot at the local courthouse with Aaron by their side.
So it was a simple ceremony. No big wedding dress, no flowers. We walked out and we were holding hands and we were on our way. The future seemed very bright.
But that brightness would soon turn to darkness as Valerie realized the choice she made would destroy everything she held dear.
He had a whole nother side to him.
She had no idea this monster was lurking in her house.
I just cried and cried. I just could not believe that he would do something so vicious.
In November of 2003, newlyweds Valerie Justice and Lawrence Lovejoy were eager to start their life together with Valerie's teenage daughter, Erin.
I was excited. I had everything that at this point that I desired. I had my daughter by my side. I was married again. And we started the process of trying to see if we could qualify for a mortgage and buy a home.
It was very important to Valerie to become a homeowner. They were on the hunt for the right house that they could all be happy in.
But the following month, Valerie came home to find Lawrence and Aaron in a screaming match.
Lawrence was so enraged. They were yelling back and forth. He was very upset that Aaron had been on the phone all afternoon, supposedly talking to boys. I didn't quite understand why he was so concerned.
There was a disconnect in their parenting styles. Lawrence felt he was going to be the one to discipline her, but Valerie didn't feel it was Lawrence's place.
I informed him that any decisions that had to do with Aaron were to be totally left up to me. He really got upset because I was basically telling him that I don't need your help. And he wasn't happy about that.
So Valerie did her best to smooth things over.
I talked to Erin and, asked her to just wait until I'm home, before you get on the phone, and then that way there won't be any problems.
For the next few months, things seemed to be going according to plan.
There were no more big blowouts between Aaron and Lawrence. We bought a new puppy for the family, and we're making plans to purchase a townhome.
But there were a few sacrifices. Valerie took on a second job as a cashier to earn extra money for closing costs, which meant Erin was at times a latchkey kid.
Erin would come home on her own, and I would call her and check in on her. So, we had a good system of keeping in touch with each other. Plus, Lawrence was home during the day, and then he worked the midnight shift at his company.
And Valerie couldn't help but notice that Aaron and Lawrence seemed to be fighting less often.
Aaron was in driver's ed, and so Lawrence volunteered to take her out driving. When they got home, they were both laughing, and I was relieved to see that things were getting better.
So Valerie set her sights on the closing of their new house, which was set for March 5th, 2004.
But just 2 days before the closing, when Valerie made a routine call home to check on Aaron, everything changed.
Aaron answered the phone, and I said, "What are you doing?" She sounded just kind of aloof, like she was preoccupied. We got off the phone, but something just didn't sit right with me.
And when Valerie received a call just a short time later from a police officer, she knew in an instant something was terribly wrong.
Lawrence had a dark side.
It was just a nightmare.
I was in complete shock. What he did was just devastating.
On March 3rd, 2004, Valerie Justice felt a knot in her stomach after receiving a call from the local police.
The police officer said that they had my daughter. There was a problem. He said that I needed to come to this address he gave me. That's all he would tell me. I hung up the phone with him. I was scared. Now I'm like, what the heck's going on?
Valerie was in a panic as she immediately raced to the address.
I just had no idea what could possibly be the problem. When I arrived, the police officer immediately took me up to an apartment. It was a friend of Aaron's who she went to school with.
Officers led Valerie into the living room, where she found Aaron sitting on the couch, visibly shaken.
That's when the police officer told me, according to Aaron, that Lawrence had sexually assaulted her. So I said, what do you mean? Aaron said she had come home from track practice. And Lawrence offered to give her a massage. She told him to stop, and he just kept going. I was shocked. After all, he had a daughter of his own. And it really upset me. I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm listening to what she is saying, and I'm trying to absorb it all. I didn't want to believe that this was really happening. But I made it very clear to Aaron that I was going to support her no matter what.
At the hospital, Valerie stood by Aaron's side as a doctor administered a rape kit.
The doctor told me that there were no physical signs of penetration. That put a shadow of a doubt in my mind. I was struggling with the whole thing. I questioned her, and I said, if this for some reason was because you're having a problem with him, I said, tell me now, because this is pretty serious. But she assured me that she was telling the absolute truth.
At first, I just didn't believe it. I was like, no, that just can't be. He's just not like that.
Meanwhile, at the police station, Lawrence told investigators something else entirely.
Lawrence indicated that Aaron was just upset at him because he had questioned her cell phone usage. And because he was questioning her, she made the entire story up.
Without a confession, police didn't have enough to hold him.
There was saliva found on her cheek and on her breast. And it was the decision of the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office not to file charges until the DNA results came back from the crime lab. So Lawrence was not arrested that evening.
In the meantime, Valerie had saved enough money to close on the townhouse herself and settled on a new living arrangement, which didn't include Lawrence.
I got everything moved, and I didn't really know where he was staying. And I told Lawrence I did not want him around my daughter until we had gotten the DNA results. If the DNA results came back positive, my plan was to divorce Lawrence immediately.
But just a few weeks later, Valerie found herself in a bind and was compelled to ask Lawrence for a favor.
The puppy had gotten sick and needed to have a follow-up appointment with the vet. I asked Lawrence, and he made the appointment, and he was going to take her to the vet.
There was no chance Erin would run into Lawrence at the house, since she was going to spend the week with her father. But at the last minute, Erin's father canceled.
He was supposed to pick her up in the morning, but he had called to say that he was not going to be able to do that. So I called Lawrence, and I told him that he would need to move the puppy's appointment. And then he said to me, okay, I will call the vet and do that right now. So I was relieved.
Within the hour, Valerie decided to check in on her daughter and make sure she was waking up.
When I called, I didn't get any answer. And I'm wondering, why isn't she answering? I started to get a little anxious. I finally went to my boss and I said, I just need to go home and check and see what's going on. I was thinking, maybe she just overslept, maybe she was in the shower. But, I had no idea. I had no idea.
And when Valerie arrived home, nothing could have prepared her for the horror she would find.
It was the most heinous attack that I have ever seen.
It was unimaginable what he did.
There was blood everywhere. My whole world just ended.
On the morning of March 27, 2004, Valerie Justice prayed that her daughter Erin was okay as she arrived home.
I started to call her name and was not getting any response. Immediately, I knew something was wrong. I got into the hallway, and I could tell there was something on the walls. I ran into her bedroom, and she's not in her bed. Across the hall was her bathroom. I pushed the bathroom door open. I saw Erin in the bathtub. There was blood all over the floor. I knew when I saw her that it was too late. I felt like I was suspended in space. I just felt like I was just spinning.
Stunned with horror, Valerie ran to the hall and called 911.
Now all I can remember is the dispatcher telling me that I have to stop screaming and that they were sending somebody over. I just sat down on the stairs. I couldn't move.
Police arrived within minutes and found that whoever had murdered Erin resorted to a disturbing level of violence.
Erin was stabbed, she was bludgeoned, and then she was drowned. Erin had lethal doses of cold medication in her system. I believe she was forced to take it. There was a rather deep knife wound to her neck. Whoever did this had a lot of hatred in them. It was the most brutal, vicious, heinous attack that I have ever seen.
And Lawrence Lovejoy quickly rose to the top of the list as a person of interest.
The next day, we began interviewing Lawrence Lovejoy. From 7 until 12:30, he could not account for what he did and where he was at. But we didn't have enough evidence to keep him, so we had to let him go.
As investigators continued to gather evidence, Valerie tried to come to grips with what had happened.
It was so hard to fathom that someone could be that evil and do that to a helpless child. I knew in my gut that Lawrence was responsible for my daughter's death.
So I went to Copley Hospital. When I got there, all the kids was there. And I realized that it was real.
3 months later, the DNA found on Erin during the alleged rape came back as a positive match to Lawrence Lovejoy. And when police identified Lawrence's footprint at the crime scene, there was no denying that he was Erin's killer.
I believe Lawrence Lovejoy went over there to try to talk her out of filing charges against him for a sexual assault because he thought the results would come back with his DNA. And Erin was not giving that to him. He killed her in such a brutal way, I think he just snapped.
On August 20th, 2004, Lawrence Lovejoy was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Erin Justice. 1 month later, he was indicted on charges of sexual assault and sexual abuse.
I was absolutely sick to my stomach. I felt responsible. It was me who allowed this monster into our lives. It hits me like a brick.
Valerie now realized that Lawrence must have become obsessed with Erin.
His rage about Erin being on the phone was out of place. He had some jealous rage against Erin talking to boys. I think the reason why Lawrence offered to take Erin driving that day was to gain her confidence. Maybe she would feel close to him. But he didn't know my Erin.
In 2007, Lawrence Lovejoy went to trial and was found guilty of first-degree murder. In light of his conviction, the sexual assault and abuse charges were dropped. But because of a technicality with a blood test, the conviction was overturned 2 years later.
That was discouraging. But we knew we had to go to trial on this again. It was going to be another guilty.
Finally, in 2011, Lawrence Lovejoy was once again convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison.
It was rather bittersweet when Lawrence was convicted and didn't bring my daughter back. But I was glad that he couldn't be free to harm anyone else.
Today, Valerie is still haunted by Erin's death and wonders if she could have done more to protect her.
I know.
Best girl alive when she became the wife of the most amazing man.
Tommy was an incredible husband and father. He was great with the kids. Everything was perfect.
But this family man had a simmering secret.
I was totally shocked. It was 10 years of deceit, lies, and betrayal.
And Crystal's world would soon crumble around her when her husband was accused of the most horrific crimes.
These people are dangerous human beings.
I was completely devastated that I'd married somebody capable of something so horrible.
When it comes to love and marriage, things aren't always as they seem. Living near a place called Holiday, Florida might seem like fun, but for Crystal Kunkel, life was far from a tropical vacation. In the spring of 2002, after ending a 3-year relationship with the father of her newborn, the 22-year-old found herself transforming from a carefree young woman into a caregiver.
It had been 4 months since the last relationship. I was a single mother working really long hours at a window treatment company. I had a 6-month-old son, and between working and taking care of my son, it felt like I was going to have to juggle work and motherhood alone forever.
Romance seemed like a thing of the past, until one day that March when Crystal saw a glimmer of hope.
My dad and I worked together, and I saw him and this guy, and I noticed that he was attractive, good-looking.
This is my daughter, Crystal. Oh, I don't think we've met before.
As Crystal's father introduced her to Tommy Garcia, one of her co-workers, she could tell right away that the 28-year-old was different.
The first thing I noticed was he was outgoing and nice.
And her instinct was confirmed over the next several weeks.
Tommy treated me really nice and sweet, and he would chat in his spare time at work. It seemed like he really liked me. I decided to show Tommy a picture of my son.
Oh my gosh. He has your eyes.
Tommy told me that he also had a young son. He was trying to get full custody of him. It gave Tommy and I a connection and made me feel like he was a really good family guy.
A few weeks later, Crystal and Tommy were eager to take their idle office chit-chat off the clock.
We would spend time with my son and with his son. I was having a lot of fun, and we were really falling in love.
Over the next 4 months, the two became inseparable and decided to take the next step.
I love New York. What if I moved to New York too?
Of course. It was great to have someone you could finally connect with and help raise my son. Tommy was like a single mother's dream come true.
So when Tommy took Crystal out for a romantic dinner on March 29th, 2003, and popped the question,
Crystal, will you be my lawfully wedding wife?
Yeah.
She didn't have to think twice.
Tommy seemed to be nice and genuine. And he treated my grandson wonderfully. And I was very happy for both of them.
Although the lovebirds initially planned their nuptials for the following year, another joyous event soon eclipsed those plans.
About 6 months later, we found out we would be having a baby. So we decided to postpone the wedding.
In February of 2004, Crystal gave birth to another bouncing baby boy, while Tommy gained custody of his 6-year-old son and adopted Crystal's first child. And 1 year later, the two were united as one in a magical wedding ceremony.
I had the perfect dress, perfect cake, everything was perfect.
It was a very good wedding, very nice, perfect start to a family.
We were both really, really happy. but having all these kids, we needed a little bit more money, so I decided that I would work at a local pharmacy, and Tommy took a job at a landscaping company.
For the next 6 years, the Garcias lived busy lives with a full house. But in October 2011, Crystal started to notice a slight shift in Tommy's typically predictable behavior.
He started to have some weird problems with the car. He called me about an hour after work one day saying that he was going to get the tire fixed. And he said he would be home in about another half an hour.
And when Tommy came home late again the following week, citing more tire trouble, Crystal was puzzled.
He said, well, they must have never fixed it right the first time. I didn't have really any reason to doubt him, but I thought it was really weird.
Then, a few weeks later, things took an even stranger turn.
We were getting ready to head out for the day, and my son asked me for a toy out of the car. So I went to the car. I was looking for my son's toy. I saw this gun laying underneath the seat.
What are you doing?
After finding a gun in her husband Tommy's car, Crystal Garcia was starting to worry something was afoot.
What are you doing?
What is this?
It's nothing, all right? It's a pellet gun. It shoots air.
Tommy immediately got mad that I found it. And I said, what are you getting so mad about? Then he justified it, saying he played with it at work. I guess they would do different guy things during lunch. I thought they're all guys that work together. Maybe they do play with pellet guns, I don't know.
Why is it underneath the seat with all the toys? What if one of the kids had found it?
Look, it's nothing, all right? Just relax. I got it.
I thought it was kind of weird and suspicious that he was so mad about the situation.
Then, a few weeks later, as the couple attended a family event, Crystal noticed something creepy.
Tommy was talking to two young teenage girls, telling them that they were smart and beautiful.
Going out really nicely.
It seemed really inappropriate, and the girls felt a little uncomfortable by the advance he had made.
It turned the picnic into an awkward situation. I just found it very off base and unacceptable.
I felt embarrassed, so I confronted Tommy. He said that they'd taken it all wrong. That wasn't what he meant by it. He just justified it again, that everything was fine.
And on the night of February 15th, 2012, her husband's strange behavior reached its peak.
Tommy would play basketball with his friends, and he would usually come home around 10 o'clock at night, and it was getting to be 11:30 at night, and I started to get worried. And I was mad because he was out so late, and he hadn't called.
Finally, Tommy walked in the door.
It's about time. He was hyper, he was talking really fast. He was really excited. So I said, what are you doing coming home so late? He didn't think it was a big deal that he didn't call or anything. He said, I had to get the tire filled up with air. I was angry that it was another tire story. Just didn't really seem like it could be true.
Air in the tire.
Yeah, in the gas station. I found this phone.
Then he told me that he also found this phone by the air pumps. He said it's a brand new phone. He said he checked in the gas station and they didn't know who it belonged to.
Nobody claimed it, so I figured one of our kids could use it.
Then he told me that he wanted to give our son the cell phone. I asked to look at the phone, but he wouldn't let me see it. He said that there was no information on it. It had been wiped clean. I thought it was kind of weird that there was this new phone that all the information had been erased from. I didn't really think it made sense.
Crystal told me Tommy was acting a little odd, and I told her just to keep her eyes open and make sure he's not just telling stories.
I found Tommy's behavior really confusing, and I didn't really know what to do to get to the bottom of it.
But Crystal wouldn't have to wait long.
The next night I was at work and I got a phone call. It was Tommy. He said that I needed to come home.
I need you to come home right away.
What's going on?
Miss Garcia?
Police officer got on the phone. I thought, oh my God.
In February 2012, after getting a call from her husband Tommy, Crystal Garcia was completely caught off guard when a police officer got on the line and said Tommy was being arrested.
The police officer said, you're gonna need to come home and watch the kids.
And then the police officer told her why.
What? I was completely shocked, and I thought there was some kind of mistake. I couldn't believe my husband could do that. I'm on my way.
Her mind reeling, Crystal raced home.
I pulled onto our street. There was cop cars everywhere. My car was being seized. It was like something out of a movie. I was completely shocked, completely devastated that everything seemed to be falling apart right in front of me. The kids were in the window. Seeing the kids, the lights flashing, it was all like a nightmare. And my sons were looking at their father in handcuffs in front of the house. I felt that they shouldn't have to see something like that. They're probably scared.
Miss Garcia, you can't talk to him right now. We're going to process them.
The cops didn't let me say anything. They didn't let him talk. They just told him, kiss me goodbye.
The next morning, when Tommy called from jail, he assured his wife that it was all a huge misunderstanding.
He told me that he did know the woman, and he said, it's not what you think. I gave a girl a ride home once, and she'd made an advance, and he'd turned her down, and she was upset and accusing him of rape. I thought that was a little weird, but I felt like there was really no reason for me not to trust him. I just hoped that it was true what he was saying.
But when a detective showed up the next day, her faith in Tommy's story really began to wane.
He said this girl who had been raped lost something, and we've been looking for it, and we can't seem to find it anywhere. And I said, oh my God.
Crystal's heart sank as she remembered Tommy giving their son a cell phone he said he found. And then the detective dropped a bombshell.
3 additional rape charges have been pressed against Tommy.
Altogether, there's 4 rape charges and 2 kidnapping charges.
The detective explained that after Tommy's arrest, they discovered evidence that could tie him to 3 other rapes.
It felt like the whole world was crashing down. I was completely devastated. I couldn't believe that this could happen.
Crystal tried to stand on her own and try to muscle through it. She wanted to believe her husband was innocent. She wanted to believe that in the worst way.
I wanted to see what was really going on. So I got the police records at the county building, and I read the whole report.
Crystal was completely blindsided as she read that Tommy had admitted to being with all the victims. Devastated, she immediately confronted her husband at jail the next day.
I said, I just looked at the police report, and it says you admitted to the police that you were with all of these women. I said, you told me that everybody was lying, the cops were lying, and this girl was lying. I said, at what point are you lying?
Tell me the truth.
It was really the first moment where I knew he was lying.
Believe me.
I was really mad that not only that he had done it, that he led me on to believe that he didn't do it. It was just coming to me all at once. I couldn't believe that he could do this to me, to the kids, to everybody. So I decided I was filing for a divorce. I felt like this is it. I'm done.
And as prosecutors prepared for Tommy's trial, Crystal would finally learn the whole truth. And it was more horrendous than she could have possibly imagined.
It was unbelievable.
This was just the tip of the iceberg.
It was just unreal to believe. I felt like I was with somebody I never knew.
In July of 2013, Crystal Garcia was still in shock when her husband Tommy went to trial for sexual battery and kidnapping and had been charged with 3 other possible rapes.
I had cried pretty much every day, like I couldn't believe that this had happened to me and happened to the kids.
In court, the horrible details of the crime finally came to light.
The night he came home from basketball with the cell phone, Tommy had been driving down the road and he saw a woman.
Tommy drove by this woman and asked her if she wanted a ride.
I said no.
He came back a second time. And she said no again.
I said, get in the car!
They drove up to the wooden area. He forced her out of the car and performed several sexual acts.
Then he took her phone so she wasn't able to call for help. And as she was driving away,
She was able to follow his taillights out of the area. So he was able to flag down a motorist and call the police. So he was able to give a description of the car and actually a description of the perpetrator. Police used that information to put together a DMV photo array from which she was able to identify Tommy Garcia.
Between the victim's testimony, her cell phone, and DNA evidence that conclusively linked him to the crimes, there was no denying Tommy was the rapist. On July 26, 2013, after 2 days of testimony, Tommy Garcia was found guilty on both counts.
it was completely crazy that he definitely did it, that this was him. It was just unreal to believe.
It's a shocking thing to think somebody you've been married to is someone like that. A monster.
On the same day as the verdict, Tommy Garcia was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences and labeled a sexual predator. 7 months later, he pled guilty to the 3 other rape cases and received a 15-year sentence.
I felt like I was with somebody I never knew. I was devastated. I couldn't believe that I'd married somebody that was capable of something so horrible.
Knowing the awful truth about her husband, Crystal couldn't help but wonder if there were even more victims out there.
The times when he was having car problems, I wonder if there was more to it.
And she could barely stomach thinking of the young girls he had flirted with.
I worry that when he looked at other young people that maybe he had ulterior motives.
It's really unusual for someone who rapes to not have a history of other kind of violent or aggressive behavior. But we are not surprised to find that there may be others, and we have to hope others who have been their victims will come forward.
Seems just so unreal that he was somebody that I lived with. You know, you lock your doors every night and try to keep the bad people out, and really, I just locked the bad person in.